Illusion is the ultimate weapon, or at least that is what Kenner, a toy company in Cincinnati, USA, wanted us all to believe when they released a new toy line that would change the way we looked at action figures and vehicles in the 1980s. The toys were centered around ordinary looking vehicles with action figures which could transform to reveal hidden weapons and armor. Could they battle and survive against the other major toy lines of 1985, or were they just destined to be a footnote in an already crowded marketplace? Hi, I'm Paul the Toy Scavenger, and this is the Toy Scavenger's toy history of Mobile Armored Strike Command, better known to us as M.A.S.K. M.A.S.K, which stands for Mobile Armored Strike Command, which command had a K, was developed by Kenner, a toy company founded in 1946. Kenner started as a small company but made it big time when they acquired the rights to produce action figures for a certain space adventure movie in the late 70s and early 80s, and we all know what happened there. Business for Kenner was booming while they had Star Wars, but in the mid-80s sales began to fall with the end of the original trilogy and no other movies on the horizon. Kenner had a problem and needed to find a way to fix it with something new. In 1984 they produced the Superpowers line based on DC Comics characters like Batman and Superman, but this license was very costly. So always looking for the next big thing, Kenner started believing that by creating their own original characters alongside an animated TV show, this would help promote their new individual designs and give them free range, just like their rivals Hasbro and Mattel had been doing with G.I. Joe, Transformers and Masters of the Universe. One of these new developments was M.A.S.K, a toy line which was to go alongside the cartoon series of the same name, and so M.A.S.K was born. The M.A.S.K toy line ran from 1985 to 1988, releasing 4 official series through those years. Each series featured vehicles with hidden gimmicks designed to represent combat-ready forms. Most vehicles came with 1 or 2 drivers, and each character had a mask that was depicted as having a certain special ability. More of a helmet, but we'll go with M.A.S.K. The M.A.S.K toy line also spawned various comics, computer games and other merchandise which was released alongside the toy line throughout the years. Some of these items are actually harder to find than the actual toys themselves, but that is just the fun part of collecting. But before we move forward, we have to look back on the idea of how this line was created. So production began in the mid-1980s with the goal of creating a unique toy line that would stand out from the other popular toy lines of the time. Kenner's team of designers and engineers worked to create these toys that featured transforming vehicles and masks with special abilities. But they needed a backstory. So here is what they came up with. M.A.S.K is a special task force led by philanthropist Matt Tracker, who operates transforming armoured vehicles in their ongoing battle against the terrorist organisation known as Venom. Now Venom stands for Vicious Evil Network of Mayhem, which coincidentally is run by Miles Mayhem. Now not much is known about the whole backstory of these characters, and some of the comics that were released over the years have briefly touched upon it and added more to the story. But the basic version for you to get an understanding is that Matt, along with his brother Andy Tracker and Miles Mayhem, all helped the development of M.A.S.K's technology. However, Mayhem killed Andy and stole half of the technology to form his criminal organisation known as Venom, as he wanted world domination as opposed to Andy's world peace. Afterwards, Matt created M.A.S.K in his brother's honour to use his share of the technology to fight crime and counter the threats of Mayhem's evil organisation. With this story in mind, Kenner's designers set out to create more characters for the toy line to help these two rival teams. Now, as they had created their own licenses, Kenner, being Kenner, they reached out to the genuine vehicle suppliers such as Jeep, Porsche, Chevrolet, Ford and a whole host of others to get exclusive rights to create their trucks, cars and bikes in toy form and feature them in the cartoon. They even signed a deal with Goodyear tyres to have some of the vehicles have their sponsors on their wheel. Kenner did love a licensed property after all and couldn't not get this involved. In order to create the unique transforming features for the toys, Kenner's engineers went through a number of prototypes and designs for vehicles and figures. They made sure that the transformation process was easy to perform and that the final product could withstand the rough play of children, and that's why a lot of them have even lasted until today. Well, kinda. They also made the brave decision to scrap the 3 3/4 inch size of their previous toy lines and move to a 2-inch figure in order for them to fit into different vehicles and keep them affordable for the general public, but also making them non-compatible with other toy lines, meaning parents would have to get more of the figures if they wanted their kids to be able to play together. This actually brought along other unknown issues with safety in the masks, which we will touch upon, so stick around. After all of this, the toy line and the cartoon series was ready to go, and in 1985 Kenner finally released M.A.S.K to the toy world to fight against the giants of Masters of the Universe, G.I. Joe and Transformers. Kids were truly spoilt for choice in the toy aisles that year. What a time to be a kid. Now, one of the smart moves the cartoon made was to feature vehicles and characters in the first series that wouldn't be released until later dates as toys. This kept us as kids wanting more. An example of this is Hurricane, that features in the opening credits but didn't arrive until Wave 2. Very clever, Kenner, very clever. The M.A.S.K team for Series 1 of the toy line featured Matt Tracker, who was available with Thunderhawk, a red Chevy cameo that converts into a gull-winged fighter, and a semi-truck Rhino that converts into a mobile defense unit, which comes along with co-pilot Bruce Sato, who would often talk in riddles that confused his teammates. In the cartoon, Alex Sector would also pilot Rhino, but he didn't come with this as a figure. Also on the team of M.A.S.K we had Dusty Hayes with Gator, a Jeep C-17 that turned into a hydroplane, Hondo McLean, who came with a pickup truck named Firecracker, which transformed into a mobile weapons platform. You had everyone's favourite green motorcycle Condor that turned into a helicopter and was piloted by Brad Turner. He was described as an expert hill climber, motorcycle driver, helicopter pilot, and he had an occupation of rock star. And of course, no team was complete without a command base to rest their heads and watch over the world while making sure to foil the plans of Venom. Boulder Hill. Boulder Hill was a gas station built into the side of the mountain that could fortify at a click of a button. This would come with Alex Sector and Buddy Hawks. Also on the M.A.S.K team was Matt Tracker's son, Scott Tracker, and his cowardly little bot sidekick T-Bob that converts into a single-wheeled scooter. In the cartoon, T-Bob cracks bad jokes and is easily frightened. Scott was impulsive and curious and had a habit of disobeying his father's orders to stay out of the mission, often coming up with a created reason to do exactly what he was told not to. Sounds like my kid. But even when he did follow his father's orders, he had a tendency to end up in trouble anyway, so they featured him and his sidekick as a toy. Here's a collector's fact for you: the USA got him on a card back and the European releases saw him coming in a now rarer box form. To fight M.A.S.K, the Venom agents released in Series 1 was Miles Mayhem and his helicopter turned fighter jet plane Switchblade. Sly Rax came with a Piranha and a purple motorcycle with a sidecar that would launch into a submarine, and Cliff Dagger, who would come with a black Ford Bronco named Jackhammer, which would transform into a heavily armoured attack vehicle. All these characters would come with accompanying masks that had special powers, such as Matt Tracker's Spectrum, which had multiple capabilities such as firing deafening sound waves, allowing limited freefall flight, firing a laser, and allowing Tracker to see different visual spectrums. Or there was Miles Mayhem's Viper Mask that would do a much simpler thing of just spit corrosive poison. Now in the cartoon they also featured Gloria Baker, who would drive a Porsche 928 named Shark that would turn into a submarine, but this vehicle was never featured in any of the waves. No one knows the exact reason behind this, but it was the 80s, and most probably because, like most toy lines of the time, such as Galaxy Rangers and Visionaries to name a few, female figures were thought not to sell well in the boys' toy market. And to have a license for a sports car like Porsche wasn't going to be cost effective, so her vehicle was only limited to appear in the cartoon and not the toy line. She did finally appear later in the toy line, but we will get to that soon. Once the first wave of figures, vehicles and masks were released, the sales were good, so the second wave followed shortly. But they were not very short, and what I mean by that was the actual masks. The infamous short mask was originally released with the first wave of Series 1. These masks appeared on the boxes of the toys and they were cartoon accurate, to as much as they could be. Once the second wave was released in 1986, when any of the original first wave figures were to be produced, their masks had to now be replaced with longer masks. These now had more holes in them at the top. The two types are known as long masks and short masks. The reason for this change again remains a mystery currently, but with the inclusion of the holes on the top of the masks themselves, speculation is that the originals were a choking hazard and Kenner had no choice but to comply with the new safety regulations across the world, making the short masks more sought after today as they are rarer. So once Series 2 of the cartoon was released, another 8 vehicles hit the toy shelves. For the M.A.S.K team there was Firefly, a dune buggy turned jet piloted by Julio Lopez. Hondo McLean was back again, this time with his 57 Sherry Hurricane that turned into a 6-wheeled attack tank. Calhoun burns with his popular black Chevrolet Corvette Raven that turned into a seaplane. There was a camper van named Slingshot that had a secret jet piloted by Ace Riker. And Matt Tracker was back again, only this time with his co-pilot Jacques Lafleur and their motorised monster truck turned battle tank Volcano. This would require 2 D-sized batteries in order to power it along the playroom floor. Venom was also back as well, but this time with a new attitude featuring Bruno Shepard and his orange GTO Stinger that would turn into a Scorpion-like armoured tank. Floyd Malloy and his vampire red touring cycle that would enter the sky as a jet. And not forgetting Outlaw, a giant oil tanker that converts into a mobile command centre, slightly like Venom's version of Rhino, but this time with Miles Mayhem at the helm and Nash Gory. These new additions to the range had more of a slight racing feel towards them, which was a sign of what was to come. And when the third series came along in 1987, this was known as the Racing Series. And by this time, the show and the characters were competing in some sort of race each week. With returning characters and new ones, 4 episodes of the Racing Series got moulded together to create a VHS called M.A.S.K the Movie, and then later on M.A.S.K the Movie 2. Which, looking back at the film now, you can see that it made no sense to the actual plot and it was just 4 separate stories cut together. But as kids we loved it and we ate it all up. I know I especially did, and it was actually what got me into collecting M.A.S.K all those years ago, so a personal thank you to M.A.S.K the Movie. So when the toys were released in this wave, we had Billboard Blast, an attack base manned by a Dusty Hayes, The Collector, a toll booth attack installation with Alex Sector, Meteor, a white jet that turned into another jet with Ace Riker, Brad Turner returned with Razorback, a Ford Thunderbird stock car that turned into an elevated armoured tank, Bullet, or Bandit as it is known in Europe due to the censorship laws, with Ali Bombay, which was a motorcycle that converted into a hovercraft, and Bulldog, or Bulldoze, again the name was changed in Europe, piloted by Boris Bushkin, a Kenworth truck that converts into a half tank. Clutch Hawks, previously Buddy Hawks, with his new name and his new vehicle Wildcat, which was a red pickup truck turned a taller tank pickup truck, because why not? And of course, finally Matt Tracker returned yet again with the amazing Goliath, which was a part yellow F1 car that turned into a jet and a part semi-truck command centre tank thing driven by Nevada Rushmore. Venom's new racing squad consisted of, yes you guessed it, Miles Mayhem, but this time with his brother Max Mayhem in their F1 car Buzzard that split into 3 parts. Pit Stop Catapult, a mini gas station that turned into an attack base much like the Collector and Billboard Blast for the M.A.S.K team, but this was run by the returning Sly Rax. The Sticky Iguana, a black ATV that turned into a buzzsaw driven by Lester Sludge. And the long-awaited Manta, a purple Nissan which finally came with the first female figure of the line, Vanessa Warfield. In fact, this sold so well it proved them wrong about Gloria Baker in Series 1, and she was commissioned for a future series. But still, not Shark. While all these vehicles were being released, slightly after Series 1 in 1986, Kenner also released a few double figure packs, so the characters could be bought without their vehicles in a cheaper pocket money range. These then moved into adventure packs where the characters would then have some accessories, maybe a tiny vehicle such as a backpack that flied or a rubber dinghy that floated. These adventure packs were stopped in the US but then continued throughout Europe, making them Euro exclusives. Along with a few different style double packs, these have become very sought after by collectors and they are a little bit rarer than other variations of the figures. An example of this would be Miles Mayhem's Collider mask, which was in the German release for Buzzard but didn't match his cartoon masks, so they pulled production and decided to place some in the double packs in Germany. Or another is Racing Arena, which featured Bruno Shepard, but then it also featured Miles Mayhem in another variation. Miles did get around, but while the sales in Europe were still rising, by this time in the States the cartoon was fading and the toy line sales were dropping. Kenner and Dig Enterprises, the production company behind the animated series, decided to pull the plug on the show. But thanks to the sales in Europe, Kenner decided to give it one more attempt and they created the Split Seconds line. This series was completely separate from the animated TV show and was a completely new concept to what we had seen before. This time the vehicles would transform and split into 2 vehicles driven by an agent and their computer holographic image, which would be a translucent colourful plastic figure. These were released in late 1987 and included 9 vehicles, but also with 2 further unreleased vehicles. The split of these vehicles are best probably described as 2 assault vehicles. Nothing really made any sense, but some did look really good. So on the M.A.S.K agent side you had Dusty Hayes driving the dragster Afterburner, Jacques Lafleur with his VW Beetle Detonator, Bruce Sato returned with an off-road buggy named Dynamo, Julio Lopez drove the Pontiac Fiero Fire Force, Matt Tracker featured again, of course he did, this time in a fighter jet Skybolt. And finally making her debut was Gloria Baker, but not in her Porsche named Shark, it was in a white Lamborghini named Stiletto. So almost Shark. Venom's agents were the usual bunch of miscreants, including Bruno Shepard on his jet cycle named Barracuda, but changed for the Euro market to Jackal, Apparently we didn't know what a barracuda was. It's a jackal. Vandal was a front loader driven by Floyd Malloy, and they were headed up by the ever impressive Wolf Beast and Miles Mayhem. If you ever tried to find his mask, good luck. I did mention there were 2 unreleased vehicles, and when you see them you can see why they didn't get released. The first, Ramp Up, run by Hondo McLean, which was, well, a ramp. And the second, Thunderball, which was a holding tank manned by Cliff Dagger. There's no words on why these 2 didn't make the cut, but prototypes and advertising images are out there and they were very close to getting released. Now, a small footnote on the split seconds lines with their mask. Kenner changed the plastics that were used to create the masks, and today to find a mint soft mask is very hard. Literally, they're becoming brittle and solid and crack under any pressure, which is why some of these and the Euro exclusive masks can be some of the most expensive when collecting. If you've ever tried finding the Wolf Beast's Miles Mayhem new Viper mask, then you already know this issue. It's a tough one and it just snaps. Be gentle with your masks, people. Around the same time, Kenner also tried their luck with a more expensive gamble, and by going back to the original route of the tagline, where illusion is the ultimate weapon, they created Laser Command. The Laser Command's box would come with 2 vehicles, Hornet, which was a secret jet hidden inside a packing crate, yes, a wooden packing crate, piloted by our favourite hero, Matt Tracker, and Rat Fang, a pickup truck driven by Miles Mayhem that exploded. By including infrared lights and motorised parts on this vehicle, Rat Fang would explode when Hornet is aimed at the target. It's pretty cool even by today's standards. If this had paid off, who knows where we would have been with the toy line, as the technology used in this vehicle was ahead of its time and it's still regarded today as one of the most innovative concepts in the line among collectors. But alas, the sales did not pick up, and in 1988 Kenner cancelled the toy line production. Tonka then acquired Kenner, Hasbro then acquired Tonka, and all of their properties and production tooling, including M.A.S.K. So they did try again using some of the tooling in a line called Vortec, and then again the concept of M.A.S.K with Atom, but these failed and the ideas were benched once again. Then for years we had nothing, until one day in 2008, Specialist Tracker, which is an action figure, was released in the G.I. Joe toy line, making him a technology and stealth expert for the Joe team, while Venom was made into a branch of Cobra. So there was hope. M.A.S.K was then presented at the 2011 New York Comic Con by Hasbro in a convention exclusive one-shot comic titled Unit E. That featured various Hasbro licenses in a kind of crossover. But M.A.S.K was repackaged as a rogue-esque law enforcement agency battling corruption, still led by Matt Tracker and 4 of the original team members, but there were no toys. In 2016, the franchise was reintroduced again as part of IDW's Revolution crossover series. M.A.S.K branched out into its own series started in November, but was cancelled only after 10 issues, with the final issue released in August of 2017. And of course, there were still no toys. But although the series was cancelled, the characters returned later in 2017 as part of IDW's First Strike crossover series comic, which had a limited edition box set of action figures made, which featured Matt Tracker along with other various Hasbro properties such as Visionaries. Then again, it went silent. But finally, after years of waiting, in 2024, toy manufacturer The Loyal Subjects managed to acquire the legacy rights to produce M.A.S.K for Hasbro, and they officially signed a groundbreaking deal to bring back one of the most requested toy lines of the 1980s. And in 2025, they are finally on their way back with the original vehicles and new articulated figures, all on the original size and style. Only time will tell if M.A.S.K is back for good, or again will it become another drop in the 80s ocean of nostalgia. A little tip for any toy companies that do decide to take on the M.A.S.K toy lines in the future: stick to the source material and make the vehicles. That is what will drive sales and always has been that way. There are several third-party companies currently making these toys again as well, and they are becoming quite successful, but they are not officially M.A.S.K releases. The M.A.S.K toy line has left behind a lasting legacy in the world of toys and pop culture. It was a popular and well-liked toy line. It captured the hearts and imagination of children and adults despite being discontinued in the late 80s. M.A.S.K still holds a very special place in the hearts of many of its fans who remember it, and it's very fondly remembered to this day. But it's not just the toys themselves that make M.A.S.K so special, it's the memories and the nostalgia that it brings back for those of us who grew up with it. I still remember playing with my M.A.S.K toys for hours on end, creating my own battles and adventures, and it's some of my favourite memories as a child. So there you have it, a history of the M.A.S.K action figures toy line by Kenner. A toy line that captured the hearts and imagination of so many of us. If you're a fan of vintage toys, or if you're new to the channel, please remember to hit subscribe and leave a comment. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please check out all my other toy histories and the toy hunting videos. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, Blue Sky, TikTok, all at Toy Scavenger. And you can buy original M.A.S.K toys along with many other toy lines on thetoyscavenger.com. I've been Paul the Toy Scavenger. Thank you for watching as always. Check out the next video in the link and I'll see you soon.